Life often throws us into situations where everything seems too much to handle. Deadlines pile up, responsibilities clash, emotions spiral out of control, and the mind feels trapped in chaos. This state of being overwhelmed is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it is a natural human reaction when our perception of events exceeds our perceived ability to cope. However, the Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome taught that no external circumstance, no matter how heavy, has the power to crush the human spirit unless the mind itself gives permission. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." This means that the storm outside cannot sink the ship unless the water is allowed in. Training the mind to remain calm, therefore, becomes the ultimate defense against being overwhelmed. Calmness is not passivity, it is power in stillness. A calm mind does not deny difficulty, but it refuses to let difficulty dictate inner peace. The practice of Stoicism begins with recognizing that most of life is outside of our control. Events, opinions, weather, economy, politics, and even the actions of other people. But within our control lies one sacred space: our thoughts, judgments, and responses. When we anchor ourselves to this truth, overwhelm loses its grip. Imagine standing in a storm. The winds howl, the rain lashes, but deep beneath the surface the ocean remains steady. That depth is your mind when trained through Stoic discipline. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead ask, "How shall I respond?" The moment you shift focus from chaos to choice, calmness begins to blossom. One of the central teachings of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. Some things are within our control, others are not. Overwhelm often arises when we confuse the two. When we spend hours worrying about events that no effort of ours can alter, while neglecting the small but powerful actions we can actually take. For example, you cannot control whether your company decides to downsize, but you can control how you prepare your skills, your attitude, and your resilience. You cannot control the traffic jam delaying your commute, but you can control your reaction, anger and stress, or patience and acceptance. Epictetus, a Stoic teacher who was once a slave, reminded his students daily, "Some things are in our control and others not." To internalize this truth is to cut the root of overwhelm. When you stop wrestling with the uncontrollable, half the weight of life is lifted instantly. Think about the mental energy wasted on imagining worst-case scenarios or replaying regrets. Stoicism teaches that we should redirect that energy into what can be shaped. Our decisions, our discipline, our focus. By narrowing your circle of concern, you expand your circle of calm. Overwhelm thrives on the illusion that everything is urgent and everything depends on you. The Stoic mind, however, filters reality. What is mine to carry? What is not? Each time you make this distinction, you reclaim peace. This is not about indifference, it is about wisdom. By separating control from chaos, you practice a form of mental minimalism, just as clearing clutter from a room brings clarity. Clearing uncontrollable concerns from the mind brings serenity. A person who lives this way is not immune to difficulties, but becomes unshakable in the face of them. The storm remains, but the anchor holds firm. Perspective is the lens through which we interpret life, and it determines whether we drown in overwhelm or rise above it. The Stoics emphasize that events themselves are not good or bad. It is our judgment that labels them. Imagine two people facing the same setback. One sees it as a disaster, the other as an opportunity to grow. The event is identical, but the inner outcome is worlds apart. Overwhelm often stems from a narrow perspective. When we magnify problems until they fill our entire mental horizon, Stoicism invites us to step back, to practice what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above. Picture yourself rising above your current situation, seeing it as if from a mountain peak or even from the stars. Suddenly, the problem that consumed you shrinks into a tiny detail within the vastness of life. This exercise does not trivialize your pain. Instead, it restores proportion. You realize that many troubles are temporary, Many fears are exaggerated, and many obstacles are hidden teachers. Overwhelm feeds on immediacy, the sense that this moment is unbearable. This situation is permanent. Stoic perspective reminds you, this too shall pass. The Roman statesman Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. By shifting perspective, you loosen the chains of imagined catastrophes. When you practice gratitude, another Stoic tool, perspective widens even further. You begin to notice not only what is missing or threatening, but also what is present and sustaining. Gratitude transforms overwhelm into awareness, turning storms into lessons and burdens into reminders of strength. A calm mind is not blind to hardship but chooses to view hardship through a lens that empowers rather than paralyzes. Perspective, then, becomes medicine for the overwhelmed soul. One of the greatest sources of overwhelm is the flood of emotions that accompany difficult situations. Fear, anger, sadness, guilt, and anxiety often collide within the mind, creating mental noise so loud that clarity disappears. The Stoics did not deny emotions, they understood them as natural impulses. However, they warned against allowing emotions to dominate reason. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them." This simple yet profound teaching means that emotions arise from interpretation, not from the event itself. By adjusting interpretation, you can reduce the intensity of emotional storms. Practicing emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means creating a space between stimulus and response. Imagine a fire burning. You can either pour fuel on it by indulging in anger or fear, or you can step back and allow it to burn out naturally. Detachment is stepping back. When you observe your emotion instead of becoming it, you reclaim control. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to act as if today were his last, not in despair but in freedom. Because when death itself is inevitable, why should anger or fear enslave us? Overwhelm shrinks when you stop treating every emotional surge as an order to obey. You can feel anxiety without letting it dictate your actions. You can feel sadness without letting it paralyze your spirit. Detachment provides room for choice, and choice restores calm. With practice, the emotional waves that once drowned you become ripples that you can watch with composure. The world does not lose its color, but your mind no longer loses its balance. Overwhelm multiplies when the mind wanders into the past and the future. Regret chains us to yesterday, and anxiety drags us into tomorrow, leaving the present moment neglected. Yet Stoicism teaches that the present is the only place where life truly exists. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." These words are both a command and a cure. When you anchor yourself in the present, the burden of life becomes lighter, because you are only carrying today's load, not the weight of years past, or the projections of years ahead. Overwhelm often comes from stacking problems that do not belong to this moment onto the shoulders of now. For instance, you may worry about losing a job that has not yet been taken, or regret a mistake long finished. Stoic practice demands radical presence. Focus on the task at hand. If you are writing, write. If you are speaking, speak. Do not dilute the moment with fantasies of failure or echoes of guilt. Seneca warned that we are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there would be no end of them. By living fully in the present, you not only reduce overwhelm, but also expand life's richness. Each moment becomes enough. Practicing presence does not mean ignoring planning or reflection, but it means refusing to let them replace living. When the mind is disciplined to dwell where the body is, calm arises naturally. Like a warrior in battle who cannot afford distraction, you train your mind to remain where it is most powerful, here and now. A paradox of Stoicism is that calmness in crisis is built not by avoiding difficulty, but by embracing it voluntarily in small doses. The Stoics often practiced voluntary discomfort, a deliberate choice to endure challenges so the mind and body would grow resilient. Seneca would sometimes sleep on the floor, eat plain bread, or wear rough clothing to remind himself that luxury is not a necessity and that survival requires little. By training in this way, he reduced fear of loss and strengthened inner calm. Overwhelm thrives on the belief, I cannot handle this. Voluntary hardship proves to yourself, again and again, that you can. Modern application may include taking cold showers, fasting occasionally, walking instead of driving, or challenging yourself with disciplined routines. Each act of voluntary hardship expands the boundaries of what your mind can endure without breaking. When true hardship arrives, as it always does, you face it not as a stranger, but as an old acquaintance. The practice rewires the nervous system. Stress becomes less threatening, obstacles less terrifying. Voluntary hardship also instills gratitude. When you temporarily lower your standard of comfort, you appreciate ordinary blessings more deeply. The soft bed feels softer, the warm meal richer, the quiet evening more precious. Gratitude itself is a shield against overwhelm, because it reminds you that abundance already surrounds you. Stoicism teaches us that calmness is not inherited, it is trained. Just as the soldier trains and drills before war, you must train your mind through chosen discomfort. Then, when the storm of life arrives, you are not overwhelmed, you are prepared. Overwhelm is often a result of exaggerated imagination rather than objective reality. When difficulties strike, the mind tends to amplify them, painting worst-case scenarios and drowning in what-ifs. The Stoics understood this tendency and prescribed rational reflection as an antidote. Rational reflection means slowing down, examining the situation logically, and stripping it of unnecessary emotional coloring. For example, when Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, he did not cry out in despair, but calmly reminded himself, "It is in their nature to act this way. My task is to act as virtue requires." Instead of asking, "Why me?" the Stoic asks, "What is the fact? What is within my control? What is the rational response?" This practice transforms overwhelming chaos into manageable parts. Consider someone who suddenly loses a job. The initial reaction might be panic, despair, and endless catastrophic thoughts about the future. But rational reflection breaks it down. Fact 1. The job is gone. Fact 2. Skills and health remain. Fact 3. Opportunities exist elsewhere. Suddenly, the darkness becomes less suffocating. Rational reflection is like cleaning a fogged window. The external world may not change, but your vision clears. The Stoic discipline is to pause before reacting, to interrogate fears with questions. Is this as bad as it seems? Will this matter a year from now? Can I survive this? Most often, the answers shrink the mountain back into a hill. Overwhelm thrives in unchecked emotion. Calm flourishes in reasoned understanding. By making rational reflection a habit, you protect yourself against the storms of exaggeration, replacing panic with proportion. Another key principle in Stoicism is the acceptance of reality. Overwhelm often arises because we resist what is, wishing circumstances to be different than they are. Yet reality is indifferent to our wishes. It unfolds according to its own nature. The Stoics taught that peace comes not from fighting reality, but from aligning with it. Epictetus instructed, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, and you will be serene." Acceptance does not mean passive resignation. It means acknowledging reality fully before deciding your response. Imagine standing before a storm. You cannot stop the rain or silence the thunder, but you can accept that the storm exists and act wisely. Seek shelter, light a fire, or wait patiently. Resistance, on the other hand, multiplies suffering. Saying, "This should not be happening," adds emotional turmoil to the situation. Acceptance, however, cuts that second arrow of suffering. When a loved one falls ill, when plans collapse, or when losses occur, acceptance gives the mind stability to respond constructively instead of wasting energy in denial. Calmness grows out of this alignment with truth. Overwhelm is reduced because you no longer spend your strength battling impossibilities. Acceptance creates freedom. You stop trying to control fate and start focusing on what you can control. Your thoughts, your virtues, your actions. This shift is not weakness, it is supreme strength. By embracing reality as it is, you step into harmony with the universe, and in that harmony, calmness blossoms even in pain. A powerful Stoic exercise against overwhelm is negative visualization, deliberately imagining potential losses or hardships before they occur. At first, this may sound pessimistic, but in truth, it is a practice of mental preparation and appreciation. Seneca advised his students to reflect each morning. What if today I am exiled, or imprisoned, or struck by misfortune? By rehearsing misfortunes in the mind, the Stoic reduces their power when they actually arrive. Overwhelm is often fueled by shock, the sudden feeling of, "I never thought this could happen." Negative visualization removes the element of surprise. If you have already considered the possibility of failure, rejection, or loss, then when it comes, you meet it calmly like an expected guest. Moreover, this practice sharpens gratitude. When you imagine losing health, relationships, or comforts, you awaken to their value in the present. The ordinary cup of coffee tastes richer when you realize it may not always be yours to enjoy. Gratitude reduces overwhelm because it shifts focus from what is missing to what is already abundant. For example, before a major project, instead of only imagining success, you might also picture failure, and then realize that even in failure, life continues, lessons are learned, and dignity remains intact. This diminishes fear and frees the mind from paralyzing perfectionism. Calmness comes not from avoiding negative possibilities, but from rehearsing them so well that they no longer terrify you. Negative visualization is not morbid dwelling, but courageous foresight. By practicing it regularly, you weaken the hold of fear and strengthen the roots of peace. At the heart of Stoicism lies the idea that freedom is born from discipline. Overwhelm often comes when the mind and body are undisciplined, scattered between impulses, distractions, and unchecked desires. Without structure, life feels chaotic. With structure, life becomes manageable. The Stoics believe that mastery of the self is the highest form of control, and that through self-discipline, we can withstand external storms. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Self-discipline strengthens this power. It may begin with small habits, rising early, journaling, exercising, controlling speech, limiting indulgence. These simple acts train the mind to lead rather than follow. Overwhelm thrives when we allow impulses to dictate our actions, eating mindlessly, reacting in anger, procrastinating in fear. But discipline provides order. It sets boundaries that protect calmness. Imagine a river without banks, it floods and destroys. Discipline is the riverbank, guiding energy into constructive flow. When you cultivate discipline, you also cultivate resilience. The disciplined mind can face setbacks without breaking, because it has practiced consistency in adversity. Discipline also builds self-trust. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, you prove that you are reliable even when the world is not. This inner trust dissolves overwhelm, because you know you can depend on yourself. The Stoic path is not about rigid control for its own sake. It is about creating inner strength so that when storms strike, you are not at the mercy of chaos. Discipline is not a cage, but a shield, and within that shield, calmness flourishes. In a world full of noise, silence is a rare medicine, and the Stoics valued it deeply. Overwhelm is often magnified by constant chatter, from others, from media, and especially from our own restless minds. Seneca observed that people often wear themselves out not because of external burdens, but because of their endless inner dialogue. Practicing silence, both external and internal, is a way to reclaim peace. External silence can be cultivated by stepping away from unnecessary conversations, arguments, and gossip. Internal silence, however, is cultivated by stilling the mind through reflection, meditation, or controlled breathing. The Stoics did not advocate withdrawal from society, but they did emphasize the importance of retreating into oneself to restore clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Men seek retreats in the country, by the sea, in the mountains. You yourself are especially prone to this yearning. But all this is unphilosophical when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. This inner retreat is silence. A pause from noise to hear the voice of reason. Overwhelm diminishes when you learn to stop reacting and simply observe. Silence teaches you that not every thought requires response. Not every opinion demands debate. Not every event deserves commentary. By practicing silence, you conserve energy and protect your calm. In silence, you discover that many problems lose their urgency, and many emotions lose their intensity. It is in silence that the soul heals, and the mind regains balance. Calmness is not found in the storm of constant talking, but in the quiet strength of stillness. A central Stoic practice was daily reflection, often through writing. Overwhelm thrives in confusion, but reflection organizes the mind. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is perhaps the most famous example, a personal journal where he examined his thoughts, struggles, and philosophy. He did not write for others, he wrote to train his mind. Journaling provides a mirror for the soul. By writing down worries, you externalize them, reducing their power to swirl endlessly in your head. What feels like a hurricane in thought often shrinks to a solvable problem when placed on paper. Reflection also clarifies values. You ask yourself, what mattered today? What did I do well? Where did I fail to live according to virtue? Such questions reduce overwhelm by shifting focus from chaos to growth. Instead of drowning in tasks and events, you anchor yourself in principles. Journaling also records progress, reminding you that even small victories count. When you look back on past entries, you see how often fears never materialized, and how much strength you've already developed. This strengthens confidence for future trials. Reflection can also take verbal form, pausing at night to review the day, or in the morning to set intentions. The Stoics advised beginning and ending each day with reflection, as a way of training the mind to remain steady between dawn and dusk. Overwhelm loses its force when life is examined with awareness. Reflection transforms raw experience into wisdom. By making journaling and reflection a daily ritual, you build a habit of calm analysis, ensuring that even in storms, your mind remains guided by reason. Overwhelm often grows heavier when we believe we must carry life's burdens alone. The Stoics, though champions of inner strength, also emphasized the interconnectedness of humanity. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that he was a part of a larger whole, writing, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple truth means that your struggles are not isolated, they are part of a shared human experience. Recognizing this can reduce overwhelm by lessening the feeling of isolation. When difficulties strike, many retreat inward in despair, forgetting that others have endured similar trials. The Stoics encouraged remembering that all of humanity shares in suffering, joy, and impermanence. This perspective brings humility and strength. For instance, when grieving, Marcus Aurelius reflected that death is the common destiny of all, a reminder that his loss was not personal punishment, but part of life's cycle. In modern times, practicing this Stoic principle can mean reaching out to others, sharing difficulties, or simply remembering that no pain is uniquely yours. Overwhelm lessens when burdens are shared, even if only in thought. Community does not mean dependency but mutual support. It is also a source of accountability. Living with virtue benefits not just the self but the world. Knowing that your calmness, your resilience, and your choices ripple outward gives you strength to remain steady. Overwhelm thrives in isolation, but it weakens when you remember you are part of something greater. The Stoic vision of community reminds us that calmness is not only a personal achievement, but a gift to humanity itself. The Stoics believed that virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance is the highest good. When overwhelm strikes, it is often because we lose sight of what truly matters, becoming entangled in trivial concerns or fleeting desires. Virtue acts as a compass, guiding us back to calmness by reminding us that external events are less important than internal character. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Such clarity cuts through confusion. When faced with overwhelming choices or responsibilities, asking, "What is the virtuous path?" simplifies decision-making. For example, if overwhelmed at work, you may ask, "What action reflects courage? What action reflects justice?" Suddenly, the noise of ambition, fear, or pride fades, leaving a clear path. Overwhelm thrives on competing priorities. Virtue unifies them under one banner, live according to reason and integrity. The calmness that follows is not mere emotional relief, but a deeper peace, rooted in knowing that you acted rightly, regardless of outcome. Virtue is also empowering because it cannot be taken away by circumstance. Wealth, reputation, and health may vanish, but no one can rob you of wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance unless you surrender them. This realization reduces overwhelm by shifting focus from what is unstable to what is eternal. Living with virtue transforms life's storms into tests of character rather than threats to survival. Calmness comes from this unshakable foundation, the knowledge that even in chaos, you can live rightly. Much of human overwhelm is rooted in clinging to possessions, status, relationships, or expectations. Yet Stoicism constantly reminds us of impermanence. Everything changes, everything passes, and nothing belongs to us except our own reasoned choice. Marcus Aurelius meditated often on death, not morbidly, but as a way to put life in perspective. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. By remembering impermanence, we loosen our grip on things we cannot keep, and in doing so, we reduce overwhelm. Consider how often stress arises from fear of losing something: a job, a friend, a comfort. But when you accept that loss is inevitable at some point, fear softens and gratitude sharpens. The present becomes more precious when you know it is fleeting. Letting go is not neglect but wisdom. It frees you from drowning in attachment. Imagine holding sand tightly in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips away. Calmness comes not from clutching but from open hands. In practical terms, practicing impermanence may involve reflecting daily on the fact that nothing is guaranteed, that each breath is borrowed. Far from creating despair, this practice creates liberation. You stop wasting energy resisting change and instead flow with it. Overwhelm decreases because you no longer fight to freeze what cannot be frozen. Life becomes lighter, and the mind steadier when you accept impermanence and let go. The Stoics were masters of transforming adversity into fuel for growth. Marcus Aurelius declared, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This principle means that obstacles, rather than blocking progress, can actually create new paths forward. Overwhelm often grows when we view obstacles as dead ends, as proof that life is against us. But if the obstacle itself is reinterpreted as training, it becomes an ally. For example, failure at work may feel crushing, yet it can sharpen resilience, teach humility, and redirect energy toward better opportunities. Illness may seem purely destructive, yet it can teach patience, gratitude for health, and empathy for others. This perspective does not deny pain but refuses to waste it. Overwhelm shrinks because the mind no longer says, "This is the end," but instead asks, "How can this serve me?" The Stoic recognizes that while we cannot choose events, we can always choose interpretations. An obstacle seen as destruction overwhelms, the same obstacle seen as growth empowers. This mindset shift is liberating. Suddenly, life is not against you. It is for you, sculpting you into a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Calmness arises when you know that every trial contains a hidden lesson, every barrier a hidden door. By embracing obstacles as opportunities, you transform overwhelm into resilience and despair into dignity. One of the most profound Stoic practices is remembering death. Memento mori. At first glance, this may seem grim, but in truth, it is the key to calmness and perspective. Overwhelm often stems from treating daily troubles as if they are ultimate catastrophes. But when you reflect on mortality, the weight of many concerns dissolves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. To live with this awareness is to filter out the trivial. Will the insult you receive today matter at the hour of death? Will the missed opportunity haunt eternity? Likely not. Remembering mortality cuts through false urgency. It teaches us to prioritize virtue, love, and presence over status, wealth, or anxiety. Far from breeding despair, memento mori breeds freedom. It reminds you that life is a temporary gift, and thus, every moment matters. Instead of drowning in overwhelm about tomorrow, you focus on living rightly today. Death is not the enemy, but the ultimate teacher, reminding us of what is essential. When you live with death in mind, you live with greater clarity, courage, and calmness. Problems lose their terrifying size, because in the vast light of mortality, most are revealed to be small. The Stoics did not meditate on death to escape life, but to embrace it more fully. Overwhelm fades when you realize how brief life is, too brief to be wasted on panic and fear. Gratitude, though often overlooked in Stoic practice, is a powerful antidote to overwhelm. The human mind has a tendency to fixate on what is missing, amplifying dissatisfaction. Overwhelm flourishes in this mindset. Deadlines are too many, resources too few, life too unfair. Gratitude shifts focus from scarcity to abundance. Seneca urged his students to appreciate life's ordinary blessings, reminding them that what we take for granted today may be gone tomorrow. Practicing gratitude requires no grand rituals. It begins with noticing the warmth of sunlight, the breath in your lungs, the loyalty of a friend, the ability to think. All are gifts. When you dwell on these, problems lose their absolute power. Overwhelm is reduced because the mind balances struggle with appreciation. Gratitude also strengthens resilience. A grateful heart can endure hardship without despair, because it sees not only the loss but also the remaining blessings. For example, someone facing financial stress might still find gratitude in health, in supportive relationships, or in skills that cannot be taken away. Gratitude does not deny pain but contextualizes it, preventing it from filling the entire horizon. It widens perspective, reminding us that life is not defined by one struggle, but enriched by countless quiet joys. Calmness arises naturally when gratitude is practiced daily, as it anchors the mind in appreciation rather than complaint. In Stoicism, gratitude is not weakness, it is strength, the wisdom to see light even in darkness. By cultivating gratitude, you build an inner shield that overwhelm cannot easily pierce. One of the most underestimated virtues in Stoicism is patience, the ability to endure delay, hardship, or suffering without complaint. Overwhelm often comes from the demand that things should change quickly, that pain should end immediately, that progress should be instant. But life rarely unfolds on our preferred schedule. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that time is like a river made up of the events which happen, and a violent stream, for as soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, and another comes in its place. Patience is the calm acceptance of this flow. To be patient is to acknowledge that growth takes time, healing takes time, and mastery takes time. It does not mean passivity, it means active endurance, a steady heart in the face of delay. The Stoics viewed endurance as strength, not weakness. Epictetus often told his students that challenges are like sparring partners. They may bruise you, but they also sharpen you. Overwhelm decreases when you stop demanding immediate results and instead commit to consistent effort. Patience also reduces frustration with others, recognizing that just as you are imperfect in learning, so are they. Calmness grows when you let go of unrealistic timelines and accept the slow rhythm of nature. The tree does not grow in a day, nor does wisdom. By practicing patience, you create mental space, preventing stress from piling up. Overwhelm thrives on urgency. Patience dissolves it with steady endurance. A central Stoic teaching is to live according to nature, aligning oneself with the order of the universe. Overwhelm often comes when we resist this order, demanding that life obey our preferences instead of accepting its rhythms. Nature teaches us that everything has a season: birth, growth, decay, death. To live in harmony with this truth is to reduce conflict with reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whatever happens to you was prepared for you from all eternity, and the mesh of causes was spun from the beginning." This does not mean blind fatalism, but wise alignment. When you live according to nature, you stop fighting inevitable cycles. You accept that pain, loss, and change are not punishments but natural processes. Just as winter is followed by spring, hardship is often followed by renewal. Overwhelm fades when you see yourself not as an isolated fragment battling the world, but as part of a greater whole. Living according to nature also means living simply, without unnecessary excess. Nature provides what is essential. It is human greed and complication that create chaos. By simplifying life and aligning desires with what is natural, food, shelter, friendship, virtue, you lighten your burdens. Calmness is the natural state of the soul when it is not distorted by endless cravings and resistance. The Stoic, therefore, finds peace not by bending nature to his will, but by bending his will to nature. Another Stoic tool for overcoming overwhelm is inner detachment, the ability to enjoy life without becoming enslaved by it. Overwhelm often grows from attachment to possessions, to recognition, to comfort, to outcomes. The more tightly we cling, the more fragile we become, because anything that threatens our attachments threatens our peace. Epictetus taught, "When you are delighted with anything, remember to say to yourself, you are delighted by the appearance of it, not by the thing itself. If it is lost, you will not be disturbed." Detachment is not denial of joy, it is freedom from dependence. You may love deeply, work passionately, and live fully, but you do so with the awareness that nothing is permanent. This awareness transforms relationships and pursues from sources of anxiety into sources of gratitude. For instance, enjoying wealth while knowing it may vanish keeps you calm if it does. Loving a person while remembering mortality makes each moment richer but softens the blow of eventual parting. Overwhelm thrives when we demand permanence in a temporary world. Detachment frees us from this trap. Calmness follows when you learn to hold lightly instead of clutching tightly. It does not mean indifference, but intelligent love. Loving without chains, enjoying without fear, living without clinging. With detachment, you become unshakable, because nothing external can command your inner peace. As we bring these reflections together, one truth becomes clear: overwhelm is not defeated by controlling the world, but by mastering the self. The Stoics never promised an easy life, they promised a resilient one. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, war, and illness. Epictetus lived much of his life as a slave. Seneca endured exile and political dangers. Yet through all this, they cultivated a calm mind, not because circumstances were kind, but because their philosophy taught them to stand unshaken in the storm. Calmness in Stoicism is not weakness or escape. It is the highest strength, born from wisdom. It is the discipline of distinguishing what we can control from what we cannot. It is the perspective that reframes obstacles as opportunities. It is the courage to endure hardship, the gratitude to see blessings, the patience to trust time, and the acceptance to embrace impermanence. To live calmly is to live freely, because no external power can enslave a mind that governs itself. Imagine a person walking through chaos, insults hurled, plans collapsing, storms raging, and yet their heart remains steady, their choices guided by virtue, their peace untouchable. That is the Stoic ideal: serenity in action, tranquility in motion. In our modern world, filled with noise, speed, and endless demands, this wisdom is more vital than ever. Training your mind to be calm in any situation is not about ignoring reality, but about engaging it with clarity and strength. It is about becoming the master of your inner world, so that no outer world can overwhelm you. The journey is lifelong, but each practice, reflection, discipline, perspective, gratitude, brings you closer to the unshakable center within. And in that center, you discover the truth: you are not defined by storms, but by how you stand within them. Calmness is your birthright, Stoicism your guide, and freedom your reward.